Hello, everyone.
Hey,
Welcome
good
to
evening.
this next podcast, Casual Conversations. And today, we wanted to for a few days now, we've wanted to. There's been a topic brewing, and what is it about again?
Around leadership.
Well, it's not leadership.
Good
Well,
and,
it's a
good and
form of
bad.
leadership, good
Good
and
and
bad
bad
leadership. Yeah.
leadership.
Well, it's also around cults. And cults is, of course, a sensitive and delicate subject in this society.
Or gurus.
Gurus and cults. And we'd like to bring this topic, and it relates to leadership, obviously, bad leadership in a way. But also, there's so much to be said about this. And if we just take our usual 30 to 40 minutes to bring a bit of our perspective, because we have actually quite a bit of experience with, let's just say, maybe not really cults, like not really a hardcore cult that we were in or anything like that, but groups and group dynamics, and also kind
being
of
the observer. And
being the observer to those kinds of environments. And it's there's it requires a lot of nuanced awareness to see what's going on, first of all, and also to be aware of what you really want within that space. So we're trying to bring that space to you now, where you as a viewer get to experience a bit of our insider perspectives of some of the things that we've experienced that are going on and how we see things. And those perspectives may help you awaken some of your and reveal for you some of the ways to think about it and make discernments for yourself in your life. Right? So I think the first and foremost cult leader that I know is Marlou. Right?
Yes, definitely.
Weren't you saying that before the podcast?
Yeah, I was making a joke.
So, yeah, no, but there is.
It's a good practice, you know. But it's good you bring it up because we tend to get very serious.
Yeah.
You know, but you can get very serious around good and bad, right and wrong,
Polarization,
gurus and teachers, and whatever you have, other people that are sharing their voice and that are different. If you want to go into like the deeper topics, those videos around conspiracies or whatever how you want to call it, however you want to label it. It's always, be aware of yourself whenever you're watching. It's also with TV. When you're watching a TV show or whatever, you have to like be aware of your own space in your own room where you're in and feel your life right now, and then watch the TV, and then or whatever, or the show or YouTube or whatever you're watching, and then do that a few times during the show so you don't forget where you are, where your life is, how your life looks like, how your environment feels like, because it pulls you in. Some shows can really pull you in, then it feels like your body don't know, your brain doesn't know if it's real or not.
That's a good point.
Your brain is, when you cut off, when you see someone's hand being cut off, and it's like stimulated like it's your own hand, your brain thinks it's your hand. You might have seen such experiments.
But this is the same idea as where we get
strong things can be brought to you. On images, on screens, on videos, and also when you're watching spiritual stuff. There might be some energies going on in the background, or your system can can pick it up. If you're empathic,
Mm-hmm.
you know, when you go in the supermarket, you might feel or pick up a lot of energies, and you go home and you might find yourself in a different place than when
Mm-hmm.
you first get out of the house. But you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah, so this kind of brings me to the idea of talking a little bit about social media, and also how the that social media, I don't personally feel that as much, but many, let's say that's generally accepted now, that social media has a kind of a negative pull to people, and it has these influences. And how does that work? Well, it works because it has a certain point of consciousness that
yeah,
has a certain intent, and that intent has a pull on people
yeah,
that get engaged in that. And then what happens is what you just described, which is people get lost, lose themselves, their spatial awareness of their body, like and themselves, to whatever they're engaged so much in, that they lose their ability to separate and identify themselves as separate from the thing that they're busy with.
yeah,
And it has that kind of influence. That's at
yeah,
least one of the ways that it has an influence. There's others. It also has the algorithm, so it obviously pre-selects information that you get to see. So it's very biased and very skewed, very imbalanced in the way that it brings you information. So that's another aspect to it. But coming back to the kind of main topic of gurus here, so an extremer version of that would be a cult. But what is a cult really? Because I know, to dive in, I know groups and organizations that are in the alternative and the personal away, how do you say, retreat consciousness level, like
mhm,
that would say that they're not a cult. But then again, the question is, it depends. And of course, it gets all very technical, but the bottom line is, I think that some of the pitfalls, some of the things that we need to be very watchful for, is if there's a certain doctrine or a certain way of life that's being promoted, and this is the way,
mhm.
this is the way, or this is, I
Think,
have the way, and that's embodied by a leader that says, I have the way, or I have a way to do this. And it gets projected as a learning to others that they need to follow that same path, or they need to join in as a group to um, then already you are in a cultish atmosphere. Whether you want to say that it's not a cult, or whether that leader wants to present himself as saying
yeah,
that it's not really a cult, because of course everybody wants to say that, it already becomes a setup, or like the setup of the dynamics already make it a red flag for, in terms of that. Then what you get, one of the ingredients that you then see, that we've also seen in the way that we've lived in group, being part of groups and communities and awakening and all that, then what you also get is you tend to get people that identify with that path, and people that, and then start to and another ingredient
mhm.
here is that they
The
start to then,
followers,
the followers, yeah,
yeah,
exactly, the followers. And then what you get is, when you have followers, you get people that protect that path, so that they start to defend, like, this is the way, and everybody that says that it's not there,
yeah,
and then you get split separations between that group and other people, or the rest, or other
yeah,
spiritual people, or
or new
non-spiritual
people,
people.
yeah,
And that already, if
yeah,
you just think about it honestly and openly, is already quite dangerous, because you then, it begins what I would call a level of brainwashing that I've seen many times in groups, that make people lose, just like with the social media example that Marlou was with the referencing and
yeah,
remembering who you are. You
mhm,
start losing yourself in the
yeah,
identity of the group. And then
yeah,
what you also get, this is the next piece, is if those followers are traumatized people, which they often are, because that's why they're looking for external support, which is healthy and fine in a way, but they tend to get,
yeah,
attached to, that person is the only person that can help me, or this is a group that I need. And then you also throw that need and the trauma-based need in the mix. It gets really dangerous, because then they don't see straight anymore. They only see the dynamics of this way, and this is the way it is. And they start to, that's what I would describe
yeah,
as what you need to think about when you search for the right levels of support and healing on your path. when we talk about this.
It's very like hard to distinguish whether or not a group is good, or bad, or at least the
From a
sometimes,
mind-based level, let's
yeah,
say, right?
it's very hard
To
to like
just to
detect
distinguish.
when there are boundaries crossed, or when
Yeah.
some like form of thinking is like pushed on the people that are following, or because when you have an audience, for example, you when you first start out, you don't really have an idea of an audience. But when people get along, and over the years, there are certain people that are attracted, to certain teachers, and then you can think about like what is this audience? Is it full of people that are is it business people, or is it like people who really like stand for something, and very like, oh, I think it's about aliens, and they are alive, and they are going to get us, or whatever, conspiracy, or you have these groups of satsang, um, those kind of mild spiritual teachings. There are a lot of flavors, and there are a lot of flavors of teachers, and then you have to be aware. Yeah, you have to be aware of how is the teacher are they like complying to the followers, or are they like keeping a certain following in line, in check?
Yeah.
Are they keeping a certain following alive from a kind of point, from one point of view, so they can get going,
Yeah.
Is there
So
a
what you're
pure
trying to
intent?
say is the teacher, is he using the group to maintain a certain way of seeing things?
Exactly.
That's part of a dynamic that really happens a lot, and it can be very subtle, because it can be the teacher can be fine, and it can look fine, and it can present as a successful person. But then what are is the teacher, is he aware of himself enough to be open and authentic and vulnerable and real, that he can show you what he's doing in himself, or is he camouflaging his own life in a way where you don't really know much about this teacher, and he's presenting with a certain level of success or achievement or status that may seem like that's what they're bringing to you, but really, and are the people that are in that group getting those results, or are they do they need to keep endlessly going on with the work, and is it never really reaching what those people want to reach? And in fact, or is it even worse, is it changing the course as we go along according to what the teacher wants, or is it changing, or is it actually helping and serving you as an individual? Those are key concepts here. And I think what you were also mentioning is the point of consciousness, is what you're trying to say, of the teacher, is what we're describing. But there's also a level of the mastermind, which is what groups become. So the group field. So any group, any organization, any institution, any culture, any society, any religion, any employment company, etc., have masterminds, which is basically two or more people. So there's basically more than one person becomes a group, becomes a mastermind with a certain energetic configuration, if you will, which is often unconscious and unspoken, and all kinds of things get projected into that group, and the group starts to align with whatever the creator or the inventor or the one that brought things together, his point of consciousness and his intent gets infused into that mastermind that creates that group. And that is an incredibly important thing to then be aware of, because you as an individual joining that group fall into a certain place, position, or configuration and you get basically used or you in whatever way that your individual patterns align with that position. So you basically get put into the position that you're in, depending on whatever the quality is of, let's say, of that mastermind. And that's another thing that's here that relates to what you were sharing, that really is important when you look at group dynamics and cults, in essence. And
It
yeah,
it yeah, yeah. It's not something, I mean, it's important to know that you can learn from every group you are attending. It's not like you have to be afraid, because in spirituality there are a lot of gurus and you have to stay away from that, or you have to like
mm,
beware, or but you can um you can to learn to be an observer in a
mhm,
way
mhm,
in different kind of groups. Maybe you can try out and find some like um, people who build up certain following. It can even be um, podcasts on whatever. You can even observe this podcast and feel into, how do I feel? How do I feel? Um, can I sense some um, patterns in what is spoken about, or are there repeatedly things that are coming up that are
mhm,
make you feel like icky, or make you feel like, oh, this is really not what I'm what resonates,
mhm,
whatever.
mhm,
um, and feel into how you feel. Do you feel free, or
mhm.
do you feel you have to like give something up from yourself?
Yeah.
And that is really important, because if you really have like a guru that needs something, or so, it doesn't mind. It's even other people who have some kind of leadership,
Mhm,
also in a company,
mhm,
also in politics, or maybe you have an example of a person at your sports club from your kids or whatever. That you can like observe, how do they entertain the audience.
mhm, mhm,
That's a really interesting thing. You can learn a lot. You
mhm.
can learn a lot from observing different kind of groups,
Yeah.
and feel into like, oh, uh, this is like the target audience is a bit like this, and the other group has a different target audience,
Mhm.
does it feel pure? Does it feel open?
Yeah.
Does it feel like um, here in the Netherlands, you say we have both feet
Yeah. Does it feel
standing on the ground,
Yeah, does it feel very earthly and grounded, or does it
grounded.
feel
Yeah,
very like is the human perspective added to the mix? But
yeah,
I would say this is where the problem starts, because if we go dive a little deeper, many of the trauma victims that start to look for groups and support groups, but also spiritual healer types, it gets very difficult because these trauma victims often tend to also be women that have experienced abuse, but also men. And what happens is they get kind of brainwashed by that level of support and that dynamic in the mastermind. And what happens is they start to protect and defend the mastermind that is abusing them, the same way that you have this phenomenon where they
yeah.
protect the abuser, just like a beaten housewife
Mhm.
stays with their husband, right? That dynamic that's very well known in that psychological research of these situations happening with abuse. And why does that really happen? Well, it's because the protection mechanism is a way of feeling with the abuse pattern, holding it in place, in this case, experienced within the group, becomes the safety mechanism that it felt it was experienced as something that was love for these people, because they have a deeply ingrained abusive cross wire in their system with what is experienced as love. And because they've experienced underneath that often neglect, they don't feel that the actual love that they're receiving from this healer or this group or this abuser is actually not really love. And they start defending that, and it is actually re-abusing them. And it's not always even the group or the mastermind or the leader or the guru or even the cult leader. If it's that, it's not even always those individuals themselves. It's just the way that they are engaged with this pattern, in the way that they're engaged with this group or community, is already abusive. So they actually, in order to release, they need healing and they need acknowledgement and support. So they're looking for that reassurance and that healing and that support continuously. But in actual fact, in the bigger picture, that is abusing them if they don't start to learn to feel their own boundaries and say no and disconnect from it, from the perspective of taking their power back first, and then start to feel into what's actually going on. And that comes back to what you said at the beginning, which is the major teaching here, I guess, which is, can you reference yourself? Can you reference yourself separate from that group or community or leader or healer or practice or whoever it is?
Empowered?
And can you feel yourself separate from that? Are you not attached and being drained or losing yourself in it? And do you feel your power, like Marlou said?
Can you step out of it without losing, without giving something up,
without sacrificing something, or without having to follow a certain structure that actually isn't what you want, but you think you need in order to keep going. These are all these subtle dynamics that reinforce keeping you out of your power again. That's how subtle it gets, right?
And that's very interesting, because if you it can happen that you never have felt really at home with people, and then you find a group that is really like has certain qualities that feels like more like home to you than maybe your family.
And so home in this example is exactly the love that I was just referring to. You're looking for that love that you didn't receive, or that was distorted. So your system is re-experiencing.
You're looking for a new foundation, or some kind of
belonging.
Belonging. Yeah, belonging
is a very important one also for me.
Yeah, but everyone needs that. But if you're vulnerable in that sense, you really need you take it's good to observe different groups, even if you feel like you want that quality from a certain kind of group. Try out different groups and feel how it feels. And it's difficult. It's really difficult to feel yourself. You really have to feel yourself, and really have to know that you have some distance, that you can step out of a group and you feel all right. And when you go into, you can notice, like, when you go into a group or attend something, how does it make you feel? Is it very different than how normal, or how other groups feel, or how when you engage with work, does it, how does that feel? And when you engage with family, when you engage with people in the supermarket, how does those, how, just observe, that's because
observe is the biggest piece, but there's another piece, and that's to begin the journey of awakening, so that you go up the steps of the ladder, so that you can begin to discern for yourself what feels good and what isn't. Because sometimes you can observe, but you just don't see. And this is the blind spots that I was referring to.
Oh, yeah.
So then you can observe, but it's hard to distance yourself from the patterns and dynamics if they're so deeply ingrained in your system and they're so normalized in your life. And abuse is one of those where you don't even know how to begin to separate from those things. And you don't even know that how deeply you're merged with those patterns, actually. And in fact, when we zoom out from that and we look at the world right now, the whole world is experiencing a trauma field because we are all connected to different masterminds, whether it's our culture, our country, our gender, our nationality, our continent, the world, the planet, the human beings, everything. There's all these masterminds. And most of these are full with the ways that we have been doing things that have not been proper or appropriate, to keep it mildly, or have been abusive and manipulative. And there is a lot of destructive fields that we're used to as normal ways of doing and being, which aren't really normal for our human selves at all. And so I would say, and social norms is one of those. In Holland, we have where we live, we have very much like structured social norms and things like we're a small country, so we have very, I really don't like that. They have very ways of doing and being that are very like small mindset stuff. Like this is the way that this country does it, and this is the way that you should do it if you're part of that country. And then it seems like we're multicultural and we're open and we're very tolerant, but actually as a society, we're not. And growing up here, I've noticed that I've always felt not belonging to that, and I've always felt excluded as well, and I've always felt rejected as well. So I've had to always so in a way that what became my gift, because like Marlou said, we can use everything for our benefit. So in essence, I had to always observe myself not being part of something that I tried to be a part of because I wanted to belong. So then I became used to the observer mode, which is very beneficial. To be outside of things is very beneficial, to learn from them, like Marlou was just trying to describe to you as well. The observation
a bit
is the key.
Elastic.
Yeah.
It's amazing if you can go when you're traveling, but that's a very good example. When you go travel, you find out that other people, see the world very differently than you, or the country, or maybe you come back from a trip and you see how a country is really doing their things in a certain way, and for example, here in the Netherlands, we're not very open. And
how do you mean that?
We're not very open people. When I was in New York, for example, that you can make a conversation with the person next to you in a bookstore around when you pick up a book, hey, this is, and the people there just make a comment on whatever to the person who's next to them, and just start chatting and conversate. And in the Netherlands, we don't do that.
No.
It's
very close, actually. We're very close people.
It's very, and it's everyone
it's also the northern
very individual, and you're doing your thing, and don't engage with other people. It's I don't know. I don't really like that. How the Dutch do that. But that's a great example. But if you're really flexible and you have learned to travel and have seen some parts of the world, then you know that there are different points of views, and also in different spiritual groups and other groups and businesses, and like a business coach in the US is engaging with his audience differently than a business coach in the Netherlands, for example. They it's
but coming back to the main theme now, what other things can we give people before we start coming to a close with this conversation? What things can we really help people with? Do they avoid groups and communities, and do they need to fear cults? Or what is our best learning here? because I know that there
Mhm.
are certain leaders that of groups and communities and healing that I've worked Emily as well at the highest levels, I would say, of what healing possibilities are there to this date.
Mhm.
And I've done some fantastic work. There's no doubting that, no ignoring that. But at the same time, I would say that many of these people at the top level, and it gets much more complicated than this. This is the simple version of the discussion, but they
Yeah.
have their own pretty dark patterns sometimes that may or may not influence what you're receiving. And you need to become much more aware than simply being the observer. But that goes pretty deep into it. That goes when you go to really advanced, let's say, levels of becoming like conscious and aware. You need to begin to separate the nuances and the emotional states and the streams of what's going on, and
Mm.
it can get pretty difficult from there as well. So that's one thing, but that's not for this discussion because it's too much to dive into and it would get too technical and difficult and complex. But at the same time, I would say that my suggestion to you, all of you, is, and I think, I don't know about Marlu, but I would say join groups, but not just any group, but look for people and healers and practitioners and examples. Look for them
Mm.
as when they can offer you certain frequencies that you really need because you're missing those or you feel elevated and uplifted by what they bring as an example. And you can watch movies or TV shows to get inspired examples of those types of imprints. And that's one way to look at it. Another is there's a lot of spiritual healing work that you can do in groups to get to know yourself better. That
Mhm.
require that if it's more high level embodiment work where you get to practice coming deeper into your body, connecting with others, and coming from a place, the point of consciousness again, from a place that's love, that feels nourishing to you, even if it's challenging, scary, and difficult. That can be a good way to go. Those types of can be a good way to go for a while until you feel like again you observe that that's not for you anymore. And
Mm.
basically, and there's also a whole bunch of healing modalities where you have practitioners with all kinds of modalities and they can work on your system. And here I would
Mhm.
say, and this is one thing that we discussed that we didn't mention yet, it's not really about whether you can receive. I used to think that I want to receive everything because I want to try everything. But it is also important
Yeah.
to recognize that anyone can do healing on you with their intent and whatever their modality or their way of working with you is. But what is the key is from what level or what point of reference as their consciousness are they bringing that healing to you?
Mhm.
And it doesn't mean that it's then bad per se, but what it does mean is that it's something that can potentially screw up your system in a way, just like you don't book a surgery with a bad surgeon. And this is in a way,
Mm.
your mind body influence is very, in a way, also delicate in the sense that you can scramble things, screw them up potentially as well. So, and this is what people coming out of literal cults often have, is they're screwed up and they need to like literally unwind and come back into society and rewire everything, and potentially they're scarred for life even. So it can be dangerous. And I don't believe in such thing as perfection, that everything's always good. But at the same time, it's not, you can always learn something as well, like we were
Yeah.
saying.
You
So
can
it's the
learn
balance. It's the
and
balance.
make mistakes,
Yeah.
and be sometimes you might notice you have gone a bit off,
Yeah.
and then you find yourself going back to another to another way of thinking or
Yeah.
being,
Yeah.
and yeah, be it life is a learning journey,
Mm-hmm.
like all the way. Whatever we do, you can learn something
Mm-hmm.
from.
Mm-hmm.
You can get something out of it.
Mm-hmm.
Also, when something looks good and then it turns out to be bad,
Mm-hmm.
you can really get stronger by learning from those kind of situations. But
Yeah.
only the thing is, if you don't see when you're crossing a boundary for yourself, then it's like then it's not, then you have to like um be, yeah, how you call it, you have to be careful with yourself, you have to like put yourself first always.
Yeah. That's a good key to end with. Put yourself first, because many unconscious trauma victims that seek support through groups and communities and masterminds and potentially cults, they have lost their sense of feeling themselves to the point where they don't put themselves first. And if they're codependent and they are in a pleasing kind of
Yeah,
role where
don't
they
put the
have those
guru
types of dynamics, you
first.
put the guru first, you put the teacher first, or the leader first.
Yeah, and ask yourself, why are you there? And is it still helping you,
Yeah.
or are you helping them? Or do you get enough benefits, or
Yeah.
has it changed? Like,
And this is where it gets
this,
even very nuanced, though, because
yeah,
here I just want to bring up again one more thing, is where sometimes it may seem, appearances may really deceive. It may seem like that teacher is the perfect teacher and they are helping you and you are
they
going
have
on your way and everything is
together.
perfect and it's working and it's difficult, but it's a trajectory. And even then, still under the surface, when you go up that ladder and you start to elevate, you start to feel the burdens that you're also taking on
That,
from that consciousness that you're in, that may have
exactly.
even felt good before and it was okay, and now
Yeah,
it's starting to burden you more and more. And that's not spoken, and the unspoken things within that mastermind dynamic start
yeah,
to affect your system,
yeah.
and you carry that with you. And again, even for those of you that are not so spiritual, or that are in the beginning of their journey, of your journey of becoming spiritual, and you don't know, and this is all overwhelmingly much, there's a whole realm of energetic communication that's happening, and
Yeah.
the inner, that we haven't even properly talked about yet. We'll get to that more and more if you keep following us here on these podcasts. But there's just it's important because we're all electromagnetic, energetic, frequency-based beings, and
Mhm.
that's who we are in essence. We're not just material tissue and blood. We have a soul. We have energetic communications and stuff, and
There's an
just
exchange.
there's an exchange happening continuously.
Yeah.
And this is, for example, I mean, to give you one example, and I know we're coming close to an end, but um, when people say in a relationship, "Ooh," they start to feel that the relationship doesn't feel good. It has nothing to do with the physicality of anything. It has to do with a feeling. They're tuning into the mastermind of the relationship, and they're feeling that that relationship is starting to feel bad, or it's starting to drain, or for one person it's starting to
Mhm.
get worse and stuff. Why is that? Because they're feeling into the energetic communication that's happening. This is how we work, this is how we operate. Very normal that that happens within relationships. We hear, men and women all the time saying, well, I left this relationship, it's starting to feel bad and I didn't feel this and that. Very normal. But we don't really realize that as a society, that that's happening with everything we do all the time, that communication.
Yeah.
So we need to start becoming aware of that. And then we start to get to the aspect of what we're discussing in this podcast, which is group dynamics and cult dynamics and leader dynamics and community dynamics, so that we start to understand what we're really signing up to, what we're engaged with.
Yeah.
This is why so much of the world is structured in the form of contracts and terms and agreements and buy-ins and all of that, and social media especially, and the things that we're getting everywhere in the small print and the terms and conditions and everything, because it's about the exchange that's happening all the time. And it has a whole under the surface deeper context that most people in life aren't even fully aware of, just tip of the iceberg. And this is why that's in a way exciting to discuss, why we're doing that today, but also in the coming future of our podcast. So anything else you want to add to that long story I just shared, Marlu, to finish off?
Yeah, no, I think these are some good points to get you started, or it might get you thinking, or might get you doubting, or whatever. You can always like ask us any question you wanna, if you wanna discuss something, or you're doubting, or really want to pinpoint out or want to understand if you want to, if you want to know what you're feeling, or because sometimes you're feeling some kind of, you're getting something in the energetic exchange, and um, it's sometimes hard to really pinpoint what's going on. But one last thing you can do, and that's really important, is how is your mind attuned to during the day? Because when you're following a lot of like things online, and if you get a lot of imprints from a certain kind of point of view, your brain starts to like look for in the outside world for more information in line with that piece, and you can sometimes I see like people that are really like, I don't know, when that they have a that they forget to like put off their glasses, and when they look at a show or whatever, and they go in the outside world and they still wear those glasses, and those glasses might not even um be true, or you have to like, maybe you notice yourself that you watch a show and you get reached, and it like if you get like an energetic like sunglasses or something, and then you're going outside of the world and you're looking with some new kind of point of view, just ask yourself, is it better or is it worse?
Yeah.
It,
And what do they do with that information? Decide whether that comes from whatever they're following or connected to.
yeah,
or-
does it feel good?
Yeah.
And how does it make you feel? Is it making is it, does it feel lighter, or makes it does it make you feel heavy? When you go out in the world, like you start to see things a bit more negative or a bit more positive. That too much positivity isn't always good, but that's
That's another topic.
a good other topic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, some good tips there. I think that's definitely something. And also remember that we're bringing through, just before we end, we're bringing through our wisdom in the present moment through to you. So you're actually already receiving imprints from our knowledge base, let's just say, of experience that we are imparting through this communication to you. And you will start to feel those shifts. You'll start to realize things, and even the things also that Marloes says sometimes they may not always be 100% clear, but there's also a reason for why Marloes says them the way they do, because they bring you a certain open space, like she was just saying, where your brain starts to look for new ways of, it starts to acclimate. And this is why we're all very sensitive beings. We're all sponges. We take in information from all kinds of sources. I mean, TV is one of those classic examples. We take in information and it affects us. So, but what's most important is always to come back to, is that intent from which you are receiving information, where it's coming from, is that intent pure? Is it coming from the right place, and is it coming from the heart or from love? These are key concepts to keep in mind, principles to live by, so that you always know that is, and you start to trust that barometer, because that's the key. That's the most important. Pure, the right intent from love. These, and of course, it gets more nuanced than that. The simple version is, that's I think one of the basic things that you really have to be aware of.
Yeah.
All right. With that, we're going to end for today, and we will see you again next time. Have a good day wherever you are. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.